So moving on then, let's have a look at the F1's data, shall we? This is the from the race, so F1 Visualize. This is the race. The visualization, let's say, of Max Verstappen winning, Lando Norris second, Leclerc third, and then nearly 30 seconds back, partly thanks for a puncture, was Lewis Hamilton, Piastri, and Russell. DNF obviously there for Carlos Sainz. But there we go. But let's get into that data, shall we? And this is the average race pace, where you can see Verstappen is fastest. We've got another one for the race pace though, which I think may be a bit possibly a bit clearer. So, I mean, the average speed for Red Bull was 139.206, and the McLaren 139.290, just 800ths off. Now, the reason I think McLaren potentially have the pace this weekend is, if you remember, we're looking at their average pace for McLaren. This and both Red Bull and McLaren did the same, medium to soft rather than Leclerc soft to medium, which nearly worked for Charles Leclerc, as we know. Lando was stuck behind the Ferrari for most of the race. And I think, take that away, and I think it would maybe be minus 0.84 for potentially for Lando Norris. In terms of his race pace, I do think McLaren could have been a bit faster. The sad thing is, this is me just guessing. We're never really going to know, which is kind of like, a bit frustrating. But when we get into our tyre strategies, how boring is this? We look at the top, it was mediums to softs nearly all the way round, even if it was used mediums to use soft. For example, when you look at Fernando Alonso, used soft to mediums for Charles Leclerc, used mediums to use softs for Lewis Hamilton. Anyone doing something slightly different? Well, we had Albon starting on the hards, but then he had a whoops at 80, didn't he? And then we've got Ocon. Again, a bit of a whoops at 80. And what was it? I think it was against one of the Sauers, wasn't it, for Alex Albon? He had a torrid weekend, didn't he? And then we have, obviously, Isaac Hadjar on the hard, back on to those softs. Sainz only going to lap 6. Whoops. Bortoletto was one that did a two-stopper. Soft, medium, soft. He was right at the back. I guess, what were they going to do? It was Kimi Antonelli. Had a decent run in terms of starting once again on the mediums, but then he made quite a few passes, didn't he? Did old Kimi Antonelli? Where is he here? There we go, Antonelli. Yeah, on the mediums and then back onto the softs, and he also got the fastest lap, didn't he? Yeah, absolutely. As my mouth is going so dry. So this was the average gap to Verstappen, which, in terms of like lap time. No, it's really fairly close to my overall. Once again, I think the Ferrari was holding him up. About 0.3 for Leclerc, nearly half a second for both Hamilton, just under the half a second for both Hamilton and Mr. Piastri. Russell about 0.6 off. Antonelli, not too bad really. I think you can be quite proud of that in terms of his race pace, because we know how good George Russell is, and Kimi Antonelli just shy of 0.8 off the race pace, so that's not too bad at all. And we go all the way down to once again the two Alpines really slow, 1.8 pretty much together seconds off Tsunoda, 0.8 off Verstappen. It's the second Red Bull seat. What do you expect? 0.9 off for Hulkenberg, who scored the points. Alonso and Stroll really close, 1.1 and 1.2 respectively. Stroll actually doing a half decent manoeuvre as well towards the end of the race for us. So absolutely fair play to Lance Stroll. That wasn't bad at all. But yeah, overall, I don't think there's too many surprises there. As I mentioned, we can talk about the McLarens potentially being faster, but we're never really going to know. And in terms of the pits, Verstappen pretty much led lights to flag. Obviously, he didn't get the fastest lap. Sadly, as you can see here, Leclerc pitted really early, but then got the undercut. Was very careful on the medium tyres. He started on the softs, and the softs were older, and they just kind of fell off a cliff really almost towards the end, which is the reason why Norris, he came on the radio and was like, my softs are done, I'm done. He kind of got a second wind, whether that was, a fake out or I don't know, but then he came back and he ended up doing a really decent pass on Leclerc. So George Russell again pitted fairly late, but yeah, the race as a whole, if I'm honest, was fairly uninteresting really. Interesting first lap. We had a nice battle between Leclerc and Lando Norris, and a few battles behind, but that was pretty much about it. It was, if I'm honest, one of the top 3 most boring USA Grand Prix at COTA, which is unusual because it's a track that normally gives good racing. But I also blame it down to the cars and maybe the boring Pirelli tyres potentially. But there we go. So this was reaction times at the start, which I always think is quite interesting. So we got 0 to 100 and 0 to 200. So the best reaction time was Max Verstappen, even though it did initially look like Lando got the jump. But 2.8 to Lando's 2.9. Both of them 5.3. It took him 5.3 to get seconds to get up to 200 kilometers an hour. 2.9 to get up to 100. But it was on the soft tyres. He got a slight. He didn't react as quick as Lando Norris, but it was in that second phase of the start and that first corner where he yeeted around the outside of Lando Norris, didn't he? I mean, he had so much more grip on those soft tyres. It was Alex Albon 5.8 who got a really bad start. So there we go. Yeah, I mean, that's always quite interesting. Now, when we look at the pit times, the fastest was the average was 224.9 seconds. That's from entering the pit to exiting the pit. The fastest was V-Carb on 23.45. Again, McLaren they've got a problem with this second stop. Again, like Italy, like I think was it Singapore, like Singapore. The guy that comes in for that second stop, it all seems to go horribly wrong. Not as badly wrong as this time, but still 3.8 seconds, I think, wasn't it? In the end, for Lando Norris, which is just not good enough. Ferrari, though, on the money, as well as Mercedes, 23.8. Red Bull are always consistently good. I mean, McLaren 23.9 in the end, but still, yeah, that Lando Norris, that was really amateurish, wasn't it? Amateur hour. Now, this is always interesting. Top speeds, Russell, 3.26. What's that about? Because the highest was Lance Stroll, 3.42. Oh, my gosh. Probably getting that slipstream and the DRS down that back straight, I'd imagine. When we look at McLaren, 3.36 for Norris and 3.33 for Piastri. Not particularly fast, but even both Ferrari, 3.32 and 3.31. I mean, yeah, their differences. Colapinto 3.39, but when you look at it, you need to get all the way for a top guy to get to what? Lando Norris on 3.36, halfway down the line, to get a car that was, comfortably one of the pace setters. And even that Max Verstappen on 3.29, that's because he was leading. He probably hardly ever got DRS. So, yeah, it's that telemetry data that way is always skewed. It's always better to look at the qualifying telemetry data, which I would think is going to be somewhat, which I think is always going to be